At around 2300 BCE, a group known as the Akkadians conquered Sumer. They made all the city-states part of a single empire. The Akkadians conquered the land and created the world's first empire. They were led by a king named Sargon, who used powerful and smart military strategies to retain power. During the span of the empire, the Akkadians had some great accomplishments. The Akkadian language replaced the Sumerian language. Art flourished with three-dimensional sculptures. Unfortunately, the Akkadian Empire only lasted about 200 years and fell to new invaders from the north. And Sumer went back to being independent city-states until a king named Hammurabi came around. Hammurabi is mostly known for his code of laws, which were used to unify and preserve order. The code spelled out specific punishments for wrongdoing. For example, if fire break out in a house, and someone who comes to put it out cast his eye upon the property of the owner of the house, and take the property of the master of the house, he shall be thrown into that selfsame fire. Although the laws seemed harsh, this was the first time where laws were applied to everyone. The next great empire to rule Mesopotamia were a group called the Assyrians. The Assyrians were a warlike people and were feared for their military might and cruelty. The Assyrian Empire lasted for about 300 years, and in the end, the territory proved too big to control and was plundered. Eventually, the Babylonians once again took control of the area. The Neo-Babylonian Empire's most famous king was Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebs ruled for over 40 years and expanded the empire whenever he could. The new Babylonian Empire only lasted about 75 years and was conquered by another great empire, the Persians. Empires give me some mixed emotions. On one hand, they pumped out some great achievements like the first code of laws, great military achievements, and beautiful wonders of the world. But on the other hand, they are taking over groups of people and forcing their control upon them.
Mesopotamia is an exceedingly fertile plain situated between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Inhabited for nearly 12,000 years, Mesopotamia's stable climate, rich soil, and steady supply of fresh water made it ideal for agriculture to develop and thrive. Despite near constant warfare, innovation and development thrived in ancient Mesopotamia. They built on a monumental scale, from palaces to ziggurats. Mammoth temples served as ritual locations to commune with the gods. They also developed advanced mathematics, including a base 60 system that created a 60-second minute, a 60-minute hour, and a 360-degree circular angle. They divided one Earth year into 12 periods. Each was named after the most prominent constellations in the heavens, a tradition later adopted by the Greeks to create the zodiac. They also divided the week into 7 days, naming each after their 7 gods, embodied by the 7 observable planets in the sky. But perhaps the most impactful innovation to come out of Mesopotamia is literacy. What began as simple pictures scrawled onto wet clay to keep track of goods and wealth developed into a sophisticated writing system by the year 3200 BC. This writing system would come to be called cuneiform in modern times and proved so flexible that, over the span of 3,000 years, it would be adapted for over a dozen different major languages and countless uses, including recording the law of the Babylonian king Hammurabi, which formed the basis of a standardized justice system.
Every mosaic starts with a solid foundation.
I create in this box a cross-section of what we will see if we look to the substrate under a mosaic.
The 1st century AD architect Vitruvius described the ideal foundation as being made of 4 layers.
The first one, called statumen, was created just with big pieces of bricks or pottery.
Next came the rudis, a mixture of rubble and lime, beaten solid to a thickness of 9 inches.
On top of the rudus, it's called nucleus. It's created with a mix of lime and small pieces of brick.
Finally, the setting bed in which the tesserae were placed was an even finer layer of mortar.
It's a mix created with lime and powder of brick.
Here, our artist marks the area on the setting bed that will become the head of the giraffe. Ancient artisans would have used a sharp instrument to incise guidelines into the mortar as they planned their mosaic, using string, nails, compasses, and calipers to help lay out their plans. Next, he uses pigments of various colors to designate where the figure in the background will appear. As he fills in the mosaic, these colors will guide his selection of tesserae. The pigment won't show in the final mosaic. To cut tesserae from raw materials, artists use a hammer and a chisel-like blade set into a block.
With the hammer, it's possible to cut very thick pieces of marble like this one with not a lot of force.
In experienced hands, these tools can quickly and accurately produce tesserae of exactly the desired size and shape, even from fragile materials like glass. As the artist lays the tesserae into the setting bed, he carefully chooses sizes and shapes to fit the subject.
With a lot of practice, just rotating the piece in my hand, I'm able to tell the size, the shape, and to choose the size I'm gonna place without looking.
Smaller tesserae are used for more detailed areas. He chooses materials and colors to fill in the background, and others to outline the figure. Finally, the surface of the mosaic is leveled by grinding the tesserae to an even height.
The pumice stone, it's a very soft and light material which can make the top of the mosaic very smooth and even.
First of all, if you plan on doing any cutting of any tiles at all, then you're going to need a pair of nippers, and there are 2 types for you to choose from: the wheeled nipper and the standard nipper. These curious-looking wheeled nippers are essential cutting tools if you're looking at cutting glass tiles. The wheels have a very fine edge that grips the tile as you squeeze the handles down, and the line of pressure that this creates cuts through the glass without shattering it. Wheeled nippers can also be used for ceramic tiles, although they can be a little bit clumsy if you're cutting long lines, but they're really good if you're doing detailed work. Standard nippers, on the other hand, can't be used with glass tiles at all. They will always just shatter the tile rather than cutting it. But they are perfect for working with all types of unglazed ceramic, so depending on which type of media you're looking to work with, will probably dictate the type of nippers you're looking to buy. If it's the bright and vibrant hues of glass that's tempting you, then go for the wheels. If it's the gentle hues of natural ceramic that really stand out, then you can get away with just the standard nippers. If it's mixed media that takes your fancy, then you're obviously going to be wanting both. But also bear in mind, this is only if you're looking to actually cut the tiles. These mirrors and these coasters, for example, have been made without cutting a single tile, and they make perfect projects for beginners if you're just starting out with mosaics and kind of just want to get a feel for it. But if it's the crazy paving style that you're going for, then you will definitely need to cut the tiles if you want to achieve that look. The second vital tool, and perhaps the most obvious one for mosaics, is the tiles themselves. This is a pretty big subject though, so I'm actually going to cover it in more detail in the next video. But for now, you just need to know that mosaic tiles come in a vast array of different shapes and colours and sizes. There are glass tiles, ceramic tiles, mirror tiles, glittered ones, striped ones, matte ones, you name it, it's out there, it's available. Some need to be cut, and some really should never be cut. Some are easy to work with, and there are some that really will test your patience, and you should probably move on to it when you're a bit more advanced. But as I say, we will cover these in more detail in the next video. There are 3 types of glue traditionally used in mosaic. PVA glue, which is that type white stuff that you used as a kid and you spread it around with a big plastic spatula. This is perfect for flat projects, so your mirrors, frame, borders, anything where you're not going to be fighting gravity in any way. Cheap PVA is ideal because it doesn't dry too quickly, which gives you time to readjust the tiles if you need to a little bit. But when it does dry, it gives a nice firm grip. If you're creating projects that will have a gravitational issue, such as working on curved surfaces like rocks or plant pots, then I would go with a fabric glue. This is just another type of PVA, but it's much thicker and bonds more quickly than standard PVA, meaning your tiles are less likely to slip into the wrong position before they've had time to dry. Lastly, you can use the tile grout itself as a glue. If it's an adhesive tile grout, then it's got PVA already in it, and by just pressing tiles in it, you can use it to stick it to your surface. This type of grout gives a good strong bond, and it's ideal for freestyle projects such as decorating rocks or mosaics with children, as they can just press the tiles in wherever they please. And the only real downside to it is that it can be difficult to reposition your tiles. Most mosaics use grout in between the tiles as it strengthens the whole piece, firms the tiles in place, and the different colours of grout can also have a really strong effect on how the whole piece looks. White grout makes the individual tiles stand out, but it also displays the colours of the tiles most effectively, whereas a soft grey will push the grout into the background, and this makes it much easier to see the tiles as one large group of colour, rather than as individual little pieces. Very dark grout, on the other hand, stands out the most and could become almost the main feature of the whole piece. You just need to be aware that black or very dark grey grout can also stain ceramic tiles, especially if they're the paler ones, and so it's usually best to work with dark greys and blacks on glass. There are lots of things you can use as a board or object to decorate with mosaics. The only rule is that it needs to be solid. Mosaic will break really easy if it's distorted in any way. Wood is perhaps the most obvious choice for indoors, as it's solid, cheap, easily cut to all manner of different shapes and sizes. Personally, I like to create hangable wall art, and wood is perfect for this because it's not too heavy and you can easily attach the little frame hooks to the back. But you can also use old coasters, trays, mirrors, furniture, anything where you can stick something to it, you can mosaic it. You can even use other tiles, the big ones that you use for kitchens, for example. They make perfect plant holders because it doesn't matter if they get wet. Again, notice there's no cuts on this project as well. Good for beginners. Kind of obvious, but if you plan on doing any cutting of tiles, then you really need to invest in some goggles, as little pieces of flying glass or ceramic really won't do your eyes any good if it gets in there. A lightweight pair is fine so long as they give good coverage and they are comfortable to wear. When working with the tiles themselves, you don't really need any gloves, and I tend not to use them just because I like to have a really good feel of what I'm doing, but when it comes to grouting, it's a good idea to get some rubber gloves just to give your hands some protection. Normal grout will really dry your skin, and coloured grout can dye it quite badly as well, and a halfway decent pair of rubber gloves will prevent that from happening. You should also be careful when grouting, as it can be easy to cut the tips of your fingers when running them across the cut edges, so it's often better to apply a generous amount of grout and then wipe away the excess with a sponge rather than using a smaller amount and trying to press it in between the tiles with your fingers. And that is all the basic tools that you need to get started with mosaic.